Hi everyone, I'm Will Brown and welcome to the WPQuickies series, bite-sized WordPress tips and tricks in 30 minutes or less. Today, I am going to be talking about, continuing in the series of WordPress 5.9 and talking about block and user experience improvements that version has brought. Excuse me. Let me know where you're from. Drop that in the comments down below. Also, if you're in one of the social channels watching this here, make sure to subscribe, ding the bell, hit like buttons and all that sort of good stuff. Just as we're going through, just make sure that you join up to our meetup group. So it's WordPress Sydney Meetup on Facebook. And if you are watching from there and you want to add some comments, make sure you go to streamyard.com/Facebook, and that's going to link your Facebook profile with StreamYard, so I get a nice little avatar so you're not anonymous. Just go through a little bit of housekeeping here. WPAustralia.org, if you're looking for any meetups in Australia, you can find those meetups there, and there's also a button to join us on Slack. And that's a little bit something there for if you're a web developer designer who creates or maintains client websites. You can have a look at that in your own time. And for the big evening WordPress Sydney meetup this month, it's going to be on March the 28th. And I'm going to be talking about setting up WooCommerce. Now, this is an in-person, in real life event. We're trying to boot up the networking scene again. And we had a good meetup last month, and there was 16 people came there. We had a great networking session there. So following along from that, be looking at this is like a beginner's guide to setting up WooCommerce in person and do some networking and pizzas. So that'll be fun. As always, I'm looking for more topics that I can queue up for the WPQuickies. So if you've got anything you can think of that's going to be 20 minutes, roughly about 20 minutes or less, that I can talk about with some Q&A, then drop us a line. There's a link there in the comments for you. And as always, all the links are going to be in the video description or video comments, and I'll post those after the stream has ended. And you can drop questions in the chat anytime. I'll try and circle around and get to them. So let's have a look and see who is online today. So I've got Future Shop from Markville, hello there. Got Brilliant Logic from east of Gosford. Cameron is joining us from South Australia, Victor Harbour. And we have a Facebook user. So this is what happens if you don't click on that streamyard.com/Facebook, you just come through as Facebook user. So hello, Facebook user. Joey J from Singapore, these are some of our regular listeners. Elizabeth Waters, she's from the Central Coast. I hope you've not got any rain there today. It's nice and sunny here in Sydney today. Okay, guys, I'm going to jump into this. I'm going to try and leave it pretty quick today. Okay, so WordPress 5.9, it was just dropped at the end of January. I'm going to switch to this view. There we go. It has a heap of stuff in it. And, it's been a focus for the WPQuickies for a couple of weeks now. The full site editor will, of course, be biggest feature to roll out 5.9. But there have been new blocks, there have been improvements in speed, there's been user experience improvements as well in the editor and the function. So let's have a closer look at some of these changes today. Okay, so the first one is block border support. Now, the blocks themselves up until 5.9 have had their own controls for them. So some have come with border controls, some come with this control, whatnot. But 5.9 is moving towards this idea of having a global theme, global settings for your site-wide, and global settings for blocks as well. So you're going to start to see over multiple versions, the next few versions of WordPress, you're going to see that more and more controls are going to come into blocks. They're going to be more kind of general controls for these. But as it is, the themes.json allows you to define border controls for blocks now. Now, if your theme has border controls defined, you're now going to see a little UI, a user interface control, allowing you to adjust those settings. And here it is. So this is one of my little demo sites, and I've just taken a screenshot from that. So you can see here, I've got a group block selected, and I put a little border around, a little pink border. So you can see these controls. So this is in the 2022 theme, of course, which supports all these new things. But you can see here on the right-hand side, we've got new block controls for width, for style, for color, and radius. So I've had a little play around with those. So that's nice. It's a nice little touch to have. It's not on all blocks, so it just seems to be on some blocks and not all of them. which is a bit strange, but it's getting there. So slowly we're getting more kind of global controls, and less having to rely on CSS for doing little tweaks like this. So if you are a block theme developer and you want to enable blocks, then here's the declaration for that. Here's the little bit of a JSON that enables that. Very, very simple. Version number 2, and it's within the settings, and that's where you define the border for those. And then you need to declare those for the blocks as well to see which ones are compatible. Okay, so here's another one. Sorry, excuse me, my throat's a little bit rusty today. This is the list view improvement. Now, I've been using the block editor a lot over the last 6 months. I've been building more sites with Generate Press and Generate Blocks, still using Elementor and still using other things as well. But in general, I've been using the block to create blocks to create websites. Now, this list view has been my friend, and it is a complete necessity when you're building out large pages. Now, with WordPress 5.9, the list view has been improved significantly. It now features drag and drop, collapsible sections, and supports HTML anchors. And I just love this. So I've got a little animation here. You can see I'm kind of picking up one of the grid blocks, dragging it up and dropping it. This is an absolute godsend. If you are developing a landing page, when you're using things like Generate Press and Generate Blocks, with landing pages, you usually have multiple blocks of roughly the same stuff, but different information in there, same structure. Well, with this list view, I can just copy, I can duplicate a whole group, and then just move it further down the field, and then just do a few tweaks to it, all without having to bother about the actual editor itself. So it's fantastic. I love this little feature. I absolutely love it. So another great little feature is the ability to collapse and expand different block groups. So you're going to start to see when block themes grow, you're going to start to see that all the blocks are going to be grouped together. There's going to be rows, there's going to be columns, there's going to be groups of blocks, and that's how patterns are enabled just now. So when you're trying to select an element within that group, the actual editor itself is, the interface is not hugely great. So you've got to click on an element, and then if you want to select the parent, you click on the kind of icon next to it, and then you kind of get lost a little bit. So being able to just look at the page from the list view, being able to just collapse everything, and then just navigate to exactly the point you want to expand it and find that element. This really does help to allow you to get quickly your bearings on the page. So I love this little thing. See, I talked about the full site editing a couple of weeks ago, and it's huge, it's massive, really big game changer. But little things like this just helps people in their day-to-day productivity. And I think these little things are just absolutely fantastic. Okay, another little feature. Excuse me. Another little feature here is live URL previews. Now, there's now a little pop-up box. So when you've created a URL link on something, and then you hover over it, it creates this little live preview box in here. And it's really useful when you are editing content from clients, and it can really help track down errors and bad links. I've got a few clients that will send me content to be updated. They don't want to do it themselves, they pay me to do it, and that's fine. But a couple of them have rather lengthy content, so maybe like 2 or 3, 4 pages worth of a Microsoft Word document with lots of links in there. So sometimes they get the links wrong, sometimes the links are dead links. Having this little preview is fantastic, because when I'm reading along, when I'm skimming through, I can just hover over the link and make sure it's going to the right place for those. So I love this little preview box in here. Now, the URL preview doesn't seem to work for the navigation block or in widgets blocks yet, just the main editor. And if you're a developer, this feature has been implemented using the new REST API endpoint. So it means you can actually use that within your block development. You can use it within any type of development, plugin development as well. So it's a native REST API endpoint, and it's called URL-details, and there's a link there to GitHub. So you can have a look at that particular pull request if you want to see how that is implemented. But I love that little feature as well. It's fantastic. Okay, so many little enhancements to the WordPress 5.9 editor, so many. This one here, it adds a little create page button from your link pop-up. So if you're creating links on a page, You don't have a particular page there yet, you can actually create one, create a brand new published or draft page right from this little block navigation setting here. So it's very, very handy. I say if you're designing a page and then you suddenly think of another page you want to link to, but you haven't created that whole page structure yet, then you can just go ahead and create that page from within the editor here. So again, small changes, but just something that's really, really useful for productivity, and I just love that. Okay, so the search box block, it's a bit of a tongue twister. There, it's been given a little bit of an update, and you can now change the text color of the button. So the submit button, the search button, you can change the color of that. You can change the background color of the button. You can change the color of the border that goes around the search, and you can change the radius as well. So you can play around with those different settings. It's not a huge change, but it's nice. It's a nice thing to have for those. It's one thing less that you have to target with your additional CSS. Okay, block dimensions. Now, there's a new block setting, and I think it's a global setting, or meant to be a global setting, that seems to contain padding controls, but it's not available on all blocks. So I'm not sure if this is just because it's been defined in theme.json, or if it's going to be a global thing. Not too sure at this point, but it has popped up anyway on the right-hand side for here. And I've put a red box on it. So a lot of stuff going on in the screen here. So I've got a group selected, and that group is the little dashed box. And then on the right-hand side in the block settings, you now see this dimensions. And it's got these three little vertical dots, dot, dot, dot. And if you click on that, it comes up with things like padding and margins. And it looks like it's probably going to support a lot more stuff in the future. One of the things that was in one of the previews for 5.9 was a gap between columns. So you could set a specific gap. That seems to have went missing in production release, but it could come back. So it's something to think about, something to play around with. Cameron asks, can you change the unit of the border sizes like rems instead of pixels? Let's just have a quick look. I'll go back. Border, yes, you can. There's a radius, it's in pixels, and I'm fairly sure you can change it to percentage and stuff as well. Great question, thanks Cameron. Was I finished on that slide? Yes, I was. Yes, good. Okay, something pretty exciting here is Flexbox Controls. So some blocks, again, not all blocks, but some blocks have a Flexbox UI control. Now, there's two ways you can get to this. The first one is the horizontal navigation when you're in the block. If you click down on this little rectangle with a vertical slice, then you can now see you can justify items left, justify them right, you can center them, or you can put like a space in between them so you can align them properly for those. And that's all implemented using Flexbox for those. And it's nice to see that some of the new CSS start to come into the user interface. So you've got this control here, but it's also in the right-hand side. It's in the block settings as well. If you scroll down, you'll be able to see those Flexbox containers. But again, it's not available for all types of blocks. It's mostly blocks that contain other stuff in it. So for example, this is the social icons block. So where there's multiple other blocks inside, which is where you'd want to justify or center them. I think as well, this might apply to the groups, or sorry, the columns maybe as well, so you can justify the columns. But certainly, it's only really usable with blocks that have other kind of blocks inside them. But it's nice to see the Flexbox stuff start to come in, and the more modern CSS start to come into the interface. Here we have another addition. So this one is the Pattern Explorer. Now, patterns have been in WordPress for a few versions now, and people are starting to get used to them. There's quite a few patterns that are starting to be published into the pattern directory now. But whereas trying to find the pattern before in that little strip on the left-hand side was quite difficult, because you had to really screw your eyes and see exactly what some of the stuff was, especially some of the more complex groupings together. Now, if you click on the patterns and then click on the Explorer, it opens up a full screen, or mostly full screen window, where you can browse through all of those patterns now. And you can really get a good glimpse of the patterns. You can see what all the blocks are and their arrangement. which is great because it's really difficult to see in the preview beforehand when it's all squished down into that left-hand side. So that's a nice addition, and it's really going to help people browse through the patterns and be able to kind of make sense of them and choose those. Okay, here is the new navigation block. Now, this is something that's been sought after for quite a while because all this full site editing, people have been really looking forward to this coming in. But of course, if you're editing the header and footer and other types of navigation areas, so other types of elements of your website, you're going to need some navigation somewhere. So this was meant to be in 5.8, but they took it back out to do a little bit more development. And here it is in 5.9. So let's have a look. When you create a new navigation block, and that's up at the top, so that's the first image at the top, you get 3 options. So when you add the block in, you get 3 options. One is select menu, and there's a little GIF there, so that allows you to select that menu that you've already got. And then there's all pages, add all pages, which does exactly what it says, or start empty, so you can have a blank navigation there. So when you start with an empty list, of course, there's nothing there. And then you might have, if you move your mouse around, you might have to just try and hover right under the navigation control a little bit, just to find that blank box, blank block with the plus sign to the side. Now, for me, that plus sign seems to jump between left and right. I'm not quite sure why. So a little bit of work still needs to go into the navigation, the UI for this. But that's what it is, this little black plus sign. You click on that, and then you can add a new link to those. And what happens is you have to create the link first. So you get a choice of, you get the link navigator that comes down, and you can choose pages, or you can choose an anchor link as well. And once you've created those links, then you can go back and you can change the text and change the description for those. Now, you have to. You can also change orientation, from horizontal to vertical for the navigations. And this is where the Flexbox comes in as well. So you can space them all nicely. You've got the Flexbox control on those. There's also a nice little navigation aid as well. So if you click on the list view, which is the 3 little strokes that go down, you get the similar list view that you would have in the normal left-hand side list view, except it just applies to navigation, which means that you can move your navigation labels up and down quite easily between that. So there we go. There's once the link is created, a new little icon pops up when you've got the link selected. This one is to add a sub-menu for those. So you can create the whole menu just in this one little block. And I have to say, it's pretty challenging. So there's a lot going on in this small space, and the UI, I feel, is a little bit messy just now. So whereas we've had traditional WordPress, we had the appearance menu, so we had that full-size window to change the menus up and down and drag and drop and get all the properties of the menus as well. Then it was moved into the customizer, in the left-hand side customizer, and we had to manage all the menus, in that little strip down the side. Now, we don't have to, but now we're trying to manage the full menu, so parent, sub-menu, links, all the different stuff that's associated with those. Now we're trying to manage all that just within the block on the screen. So for me, I'm not convinced about that. I think it's a little bit too much to squish into one little block on there, but it is what it is. And these are new blocks as well. So, I expect some of this stuff to change over the next few versions of WordPress. Here's just an example of the list view as well. So you can move your links up and down if you're clicking on that list view there. Now, there's a lot going on in this little block. So you probably should just have a little play around with it, see what all the options are, get used to it. I did play around with it before I had my talk in the WordPress Sydney evening meeting last month, and I went to go and demonstrate it. That was a big fail because I was like, what's going on here? How do I add this? So it does take a little bit of getting used to. And as with all the WordPress 5.9 new stuff, expect lots more changes in WordPress over the next few versions. Now, there's lots more subtle little changes to the user interface that I've noticed, but these are kind of the more major ones that I've kind of picked out today. But I think some of them might have taken somebody a couple of days to implement, but oh my goodness, they are godsend. So I really, really do love those developers for implementing just those little things that are going to save me whole loads of time during the day. So that's my little roundup. So I've touched on the major block and user experience changes in 5.9. And again, as I say, there's more subtle stuff that you can do that's been put into the editor. Drop some questions. So Cameron asked me a question about the size of the border sizes, that we can change those. Yes, I'm fairly sure we can change those. There's a little box in the bottom right hand corner of some of these metric measurements that you can change between pixel, rem, and percentages for those. Happy for you guys to connect with me. I'm mostly on LinkedIn these days. I should change that slide. I've actually renamed it. It still works in Developer Will, but I've renamed my LinkedIn to Will Brown EU for those. But yeah, you can search me and I appear there as always. If there's no questions, I'll just keep going. Next week on WP Quickies, this is going to be the last topic on WordPress 5.9, and I'm going to be looking at the performance improvements that's been shipped. I think there's four major performance improvements that WordPress 5.9 incorporates. For those, so I'm just going to be looking at those ones next week. So please join me next week if you want to find out a little bit more about 5.9 and its performance. Otherwise, if there's no more questions, let's have a look down in the comments. No more questions coming. Then I will thank you very much for being with me this afternoon for a little tour on WordPress 5.9 stuff. And I'll catch you guys next week. Bye.